Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Man, do we have a lot to talk about this week. The NBA Finals are finally underway. The WNBA Finals will be beginning this weekend as well. Of course, more updates with the Indians and their postseason status, as well as the Browns, and also more highlights with the Premier League and MLS. It's all coming up right now on the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna, wishing you a very happy Friday. As I mentioned, we have a lot to discuss this week, but first, it's time for our sports fact of the day. We have a baseball fact for you, fitting that it's now postseason time in the MLB. Let's get you an MLB sports fact of the day. We're going all the way back in 1949. Today is Friday, October 2nd, and on this day, October 2nd, 1949, the Brooklyn Dodgers clinched the National League pennant on the last day of the season with a dramatic 10-inning, 9-7 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies at Shibe Park in Philadelphia. Shibe Park is actually one of the most renowned stadiums in Philadelphia sports history, and heading into today's play on October 2nd, 1949, the Dodgers led the St. Louis Cardinals in the standings by one game. The Dodgers hold leads of 5-0 after 3 innings and maintain a 7-4 lead advantage in the fifth, but allow the Phillies to knot the contest at 7 apiece to force extra innings. The 2 runs in the Brooklyn 10th crossed the plate on a single by Pee Wee Reese, a sacrifice bunt by Eddie Meeksis, and singles by Duke Snider and Luis Olmo. Jack Banta pitches 4 2/3 innings of scoreless relief for the Dodgers. The Cards defeat the Cubs 13-5 in Chicago to finish 1 game behind. Lots of information there. Standings are very important in the MLB, and for the Indians, it seemed like the standings were going to help them. However, this week was not the case for them, but it was a great sports fact for you from 1949, and Brooklyn defeating Philadelphia 9-7 in Shibe Park in Philadelphia. Shibe Park is actually, in present day, is now just a church in the city, fitting that the Philadelphia Phillies did not have their prayers answered on that day as they lost to the Dodgers. Let's get into the Premier League, ladies and gentlemen, where match day 4 of 38 is going to begin tomorrow morning. We have Chelsea taking on Crystal Palace, Everton taking on Brighton, Leeds, Man City, Newcastle facing off against Burnley, Leicester City going up against West Ham this coming Sunday, Southampton taking on West Brom, the Wolves going up against Fulham, Arsenal and Sheffield United taking the field at 9 a.m. On Sunday, Manchester United taking on Tottenham Hotspur at 11:30 a.m. on Sunday, and our final match of the weekend is Aston Villa going up against Liverpool. That game will begin at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. The standings for the Premier League: Leicester City, 3 games, 3 wins for them. They have 9 points on the season. As I mentioned, 3-0 in their opening 3 games. The top 4 teams in the Premier League have a combined 0 losses. That's right. It's a very, very competitive time right now in the Premier League. Arsenal is in 5th place in the Premier League. They have 2 wins and 1 loss in their first 3 games. First game was a loss. We're able to bounce back with 2 wins. Crystal Palace, Leeds United, Tottenham Hotspur, and Chelsea round out that top 9 for you in the Premier League this week. Our top goal scorers for the Premier League. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the English native, is still up there at the top of our list for Everton. Calvert-Lewin with a total of 5 goals on the season. However, Jamie Vardy, last year's top goal scorer for the season, is also at first place, tied with Calvert-Lewin. Vardy with 5 goals as well, with a shot accuracy of 100%. Son Heung-min in second place with 4 goals on the season, and Patrick Bamford in taking on third place with a bunch of other players, including Neil Maupay, Alexandre Lacazette, and Sadio Mane, each of those players with 3 goals to tie them for third place in top goal scoring of the Premier League. Top assists, Harry Kane of Tottenham Hotspur with 5 assists already on the season to go along with the goal. Matthias Pereira of West Brom with 2 assists on the season. Harry Kane, the only player in the Premier League so far with at least 5 assists, getting it done in the passing category. If we take a look at the MLS right now, we had a week off in MLS games. We had those slate of games this past Sunday, September 27th, including Columbus losing to Toronto FC up in Canada by a final score of 3-1. This upcoming weekend, we have Orlando City taking on the New York Red Bulls, DC United playing against Atlanta United, New England going up against Nashville, Toronto FC taking on Philadelphia in Toronto, the Montreal Impact will host the Chicago Fire, Minnesota will be hosting FC Cincinnati, Houston Dynamo taking on Sporting Kansas City, Inter Miami going up against NYCFC, FC Dallas will be hosting the Crew, the Seattle Sounders going up against Vancouver, and our final match for tomorrow will be San Jose taking on the LA Galaxy at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We do have one game for you on Sunday, October 4th. It'll be Real Salt Lake hosting LAFC. Standings in the MLS. Columbus still with the first place standing, and now they have 9 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses. They're at 30 points overall for the season. However, the gap between them and second place Philadelphia is much smaller now. Philadelphia is creeping up with 8 wins, 4 draws, and only 2 losses on the season for 28 points. Toronto FC comes in at third place with 28 points of their own, same record as Philadelphia. Orlando City, New England, and NYCFC round out that top 6 for you in the MLS Eastern Conference. If we take a look at the Western Conference, the Seattle Sounders and Portland Timbers are tied for first place, 24 points apiece. Seattle with only 1 less loss than Portland, however. Seattle with 3 losses, Portland with 4 losses. It's a battle of the Pacific Northwest right now for that top spot in the MLS's Western Conference. We'll see what happens. FC Dallas, Sporting Kansas City, Colorado, and Minnesota round out that top 6 for you in the MLS Western Conference for this week. Top goal scorers, Diego Rossi and Yassi Zardes, still the only 2 players in the MLS with double-digit goal-scoring numbers. Diego Rossi of LAFC, the striker, with 13 goals on the season. Yassi Zardes of the Columbus Crew with 10 goals. Bradley Wright Phillips and Raul Ruidiaz come in at third place, tied for third place, each of them with 8 goals on the season. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our MLS news this week, and that means we're moving on to, the NBA Finals. They're finally here. We had to wait a little bit longer than we anticipated because there's this pandemic that is of the coronavirus that shut down the NBA. We were able to restart, and now we're finally here. The moment we've all been waiting for, the NBA Finals. Miami Heat, Los Angeles Lakers. One team we expected to get to the finals. One team is a little bit of a shocker. And right now, the Los Angeles Lakers are proving why they are the front runner to win the championship this season after a convincing Game 1 win against Jimmy Butler and company. LeBron and his Lakers, after a bit of a shaky start, they were down 13 early, however, went on a 75-30 run. The Lakers were blowing the Heat out of this game in the second half, and they outscored Miami 34-20 alone in the second quarter. Miami only outscored Los Angeles in the fourth quarter by 8, 31-23. LeBron James was magnificent in this finals game. In his 50th finals game alone, yes, ladies and gentlemen, LeBron has played in 50 finals games in his career. In his 50th finals game, not only did he come out with a win, but he came out with a double-double as well, with 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 assists, 1 assist shy of a triple-double. But it was Anthony Davis's night, with 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. However, LeBron and Anthony Davis got some help. Alex Caruso off the bench with 10 points and 4 rebounds. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has found his stroke these last few games, including Game 1 of the finals. 13 points and 2 rebounds in 30 minutes for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, giving Los Angeles some solid minutes. Quinn Cook off the bench with 3 points. Markieff Morris giving the Lakers 8 points for their bench. Kyle Kuzma struggled in 22 minutes, only 3 points for him. This is the guy who's been the third leading scorer for Los Angeles throughout the season. So if they're going to want some offensive consistency, it's going to need to be from Kyle Kuzma as well. For the Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler had a very scary ankle injury, and that was only the beginning for what was to be a terrible night for the Heat in terms of injuries. Goran Dragic hurting his foot in the second half of game number 1, and also Bam Adebayo hurting his shoulder. It just didn't seem like it was going to be the Heat's night, and that's exactly what happened. However, tonight is a new night, and the NBA Finals, Game 2, will begin tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC, home of the NBA Finals. You can catch it there. Can the Heat tie this series at 1 game apiece, or can LeBron and the Lakers take a commanding 2-0 lead? Let's get you some post-game interview audio from Game 1 of the NBA Finals. First, we'll hear from Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy Butler talked about, answered questions from the press concerning that gruesome ankle injury that he suffered in game number 1, and how he'll have to be ready going forward for game 2.
A little bit sore. I'll be okay. Some treatment. And get ready to go again. I think I got to be ready to go. So we'll see how it feels tomorrow, but I'm going to be fine.
And LeBron was asked about that 75-30 run by NBA journalist Dave McMenamin, and what the Lakers did after falling down 13 early to eventually come out with an 18-point but a convincing 18-point victory against the Miami Heat. Here's LeBron after the Game 1 win.
Pay attention to detail. I don't think in the beginning that we were physical enough. And you have to get a feel for how hard Miami plays. And I think they smacked us in the mouth, and we got a sense of that. And so we knew how hard we had to play if we wanted to try to make it a game. And from that moment when it was 23-10, we started to play to our capabilities. We started flying around. We started getting defensive stops in. We started sharing the ball a lot better offensively, and just got into a really good groove.
The Lakers certainly got into a great groove in game number 1. As I mentioned, Los Angeles outscoring Miami in the first 3 quarters, and only in the fourth quarter were the Heat able to outscore Los Angeles. And as I mentioned, Game 1 of this best-of-7 series is now officially in the books, which means that it's time for Game 2. It's tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN and ABC. Miami Heat, Los Angeles Lakers, NBA Finals Game 2. Can Miami come out of this of these first 2 games with an even series, or will LeBron and the Lakers be able to take command? And last bit of NBA news wanted to share with you, it is official. Doc Rivers, who stepped down or parted ways with the Los Angeles Clippers, has agreed to a 5-year deal to coach the Philadelphia 76ers. This will be Doc Rivers' second stint back in the Atlantic Division, As you Celtics fans may know, Rivers was a huge part of the Celtics championship run back in 2008 and coached the team until 2013. The 2012-2013 season was his last season with the Boston Celtics, then spent 7 years with the Los Angeles Clippers and has now returned to the Atlantic Division to be a part of the process in Philadelphia. Why do I love this move? I think everyone should love this move, especially if you're a Philly fan, because you now have a true leader as your head coach, especially in a city where you have fans who have expectations like no other. I'm not here to criticize Brett Brown because he was a great coach. He basically had to lead the Sixers out of their losing ways and transformed them into a playoff contending team. But now that the Sixers are a playoff contending team, they need a new voice. It's time for new change in Philadelphia. And sometimes change is really the best option. And what a way to change. With this guy in Doc Rivers, you have someone who's going to force Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, the two cornerstones of the 76ers franchise, to maybe go a little bit outside their comfort zone, thinking outside the box. Maybe making players like Josh Richardson shoot the ball a little more, because we all know that Josh Richardson's a great defender. We'll see how he'll be able to implement the use of Al Horford along with Joel Embiid. Will they be playing on the floor at the same time? Because if they are, changes are going to need to be made. And if there's anyone who can take this Sixers team through that fire, I believe with all my heart that it is Doc Rivers. A great move by Josh Harris and the 76ers. This definitely was an Elton Brand. This was definitely a fantastic move for them. Tell you what, the Atlantic Division is full of every team in the Atlantic Division has a phenomenal coach. You have Nick Nurse with the Toronto Raptors. Tom Thibodeau is the coach of the New York Knicks. You have Steve Nash, who is head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Now you have Doc Rivers in Philadelphia, and plus Brad Stevens with the Boston Celtics. You have every team in the Atlantic Division has a phenomenal coach. I cannot wait till next year to see how competitive this Atlantic Division is going to be, now with Doc Rivers at the helm in Philadelphia. Let's stick to basketball real quick because I want to talk about the WNBA and their bubble in Bradenton, Florida. The WNBA Finals are finally set. The Seattle Storm swept the Minnesota Lynx in a 3-game series, 3-0. It's their most recent win coming this past Sunday with a 92-71 victory. Natasha Howard and Alasha Clark combined for 6 points in a total of 41 minutes. Breanna Stewart poured it on. 31 points in 30 minutes for her to go along with 7 assists and 6 rebounds. Mercedes Russell and Sue Bird combined for 26 points in a total of 45 minutes. And this was just a fantastic overall team effort by Seattle. They were only outscored in one quarter. It was the third quarter, and they were only outscored by 2. Just poured it on throughout the game, never looked back. And in the other series, the Las Vegas Aces were able to defeat the Connecticut Sun in a winner-take-all Game 5 win. Brianna Jones with 7 points in 31 minutes. Duwana Bonner with 15 points in 37 minutes to go along with 8 rebounds and 6 assists. Connecticut actually were dominating this game early. They were up 30-17 after the first period. However, in the second quarter, Las Vegas came back. They outscored Connecticut 22-15 in the second quarter and it was a very low-scoring second half. Only a total of 27 points scored in the second half for Las Vegas compared to only 18 for Connecticut. A 27-18 second quarter score in favor of the Aces led them to a 3-point victory and a chance to win the WNBA Finals. They have one more hurdle, though, and that's the Seattle Storm and Breanna Stewart. As I mentioned, Game 1 of the WNBA Finals is today from Bradenton, Florida. Seattle Storm, Las Vegas Aces. Who'll take that crucial one-game lead? We shall see, and we'll have more news on that for you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on to our Cleveland Indians and the MLB. And yes, I know we're all sad right now what just happened with the Indians having home field advantage against the New York Yankees, unable to close it out. And Tuesday, September 29th, ladies and gentlemen, was a very busy day in downtown Cleveland. Not only did we have the presidential debate, the first presidential debate for this year at Case Western Reserve University, we also had a game going on at Progressive Field, a playoff game between the Indians and the New York Yankees. And let me just say, if we were able to attend this game, I think we'd all rather go watch the presidential debate because it was that bad for the Indians. The Indians lose game 1, 12-3. They were down 2-0 after the first inning. Were able to gain a run back in the third inning. However, New York's also scored in the third inning, so it really didn't do anything. And then the Indians were outscored in the next 2 innings 4-1, and for fun, the Yankees poured on 4 more runs in the 7th inning and poured 1 more run on in the 9th inning just for good measure and destroy the Indians in Game 1 by a final score of 12-3. Game 2 was a lot closer and a much more well-branded game and really symbolized the brand of baseball the Indians are trying to play. Now, after going down early in Game 1, the Indians were able to take command early themselves in the first inning of Game 2. They were up 4-0 after the first inning. New York was able to gain a run back in the second inning, and in the fourth inning is really when it all started to come pouring down for the Indians. It was a very rainy day yesterday in the Northeast Ohio area, and the thunder struck at the worst possible time for Cleveland. There was actually a 45-minute game delay for game number 2, and in the fourth inning, New York outscored Cleveland 4-0. So they took a 5-4 lead after the fourth inning. Cleveland then outscored New York 2-1, so they took advantage back in that fifth inning. However, New York scored 2 runs in the 6th and 2 runs in the 9th to contribute to a narrow 10-9 victory in Cleveland. They are moving on in the MLB postseason. The Indians, having made progress this year, as we all know, they didn't make the playoffs last year, are now out in the first round. The Indians have not made it past the first round since their 2016 MLB World Series championship run. Last night, Sandy Alomar, a longtime Cleveland Indian, took to the reporters after the game last night for his post-game press conference. He actually started Carlos Cookie Carrasco in this game. Carrasco with a strong performance, 3 innings, 2 hits, 4 runs. However, he did have 3 walks, was able to get 6 strikeouts in this 10-9 loss. And Alomar Jr. talked about how that 45-minute rain delay really played its part in a negative way for the Indians. Here's Alomar Jr. after the loss last night.
Well, we had a 45-minute rain delay, and Cookie had to go down and throw a few innings down in the cages. In that inning, the inning before, he did fine, but in that inning, it started catching up with him. He lost his command completely. I'm asking about it. He said he was a little bit worn out. He lost his command, walked 2 guys, and at that time we decided to go to carrying check, something that we mapped out in case Cookie couldn't go 3 innings or 4 innings. We were going to go to the high leverage strikeout guy that was carrying check. And in this kind of plannings, you don't know if the person that is following the guy you pulled out, the pitcher you pulled out, is going to be throwing strikes. But you count on the guy going, throwing strikes. But unfortunately, he didn't. So it was a tough game, man. It's a tough game. I feel like if we don't go on that rain delay, Cookie would have been fine. But it was a tough one for him.
And Alomar Jr. talking about James Karinchak, who really was their second option in terms of the pitching line for the Cleveland Indians. However, as I mentioned, not able to get it done this year. Lose 10-9 to the New York Yankees in Game 2 and are swept out of the MLB postseason. In terms of Francisco Lindor's years with the Cleveland Indians, well, his time might be over for them. He put up his worst ever batting line. These are stats from MLBTradeRumors.com. .258, .335, and .415 with 8 home runs and 6 steals across 266 trips to the plate. As we mentioned, Francisco Lindor has discussed how the Indians have been a class act organization. He's made it clear that he loves the franchise, the city, the fan base of Cleveland. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Indians will be able to keep him for the foreseeable future. Will they be able to retain him beginning in 2021? He would receive a raise of over $17.5 million in his salary, and we'll see what goes on with the trade rumors in terms of the Indians and Francisco Lindor. However, for the overall MLB, the Astros won their wild card round against the Minnesota Twins and are moving on. Tampa Bay defeated Toronto 8-2 in game number 2 and won that series 2-0. As we mentioned, Yankees over Cleveland 2-0. The Atlanta Reds knocked off the Cincinnati Braves in 2 games with a 5-0 win in game 2. Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers with a 3-0 win last night against the Milwaukee Brewers. They are moving on, and Miami defeats the Chicago Cubs, the Marlins, with a 2-0 victory in game 2 to take that series 2-0. The divisional series will now begin. Astros taking on the Oakland Athletics in Game 1 this upcoming Monday, October 5th. The Yankees going up against the Braves that same date. Marlins and Atlanta going up against each other Tuesday the 6th. And the Dodgers are awaiting their winner. They will play their Game 1 of the divisional series Tuesday, October 6th. All of these games are to be determined in terms of their time. Obviously, with some of the inclement weather we've had across the country these last few months, we shall see what those times are going to be. And now we're at our final segment of the show where we discuss, yep, you guessed it, our Cleveland Browns, who finally, yes, it feels like forever, doesn't it? The Browns have a winning record. I feel like, that we need to have just a party based on that. I bet you there were a lot of celebrations going on, socially distant celebrations going on in the Northeast Ohio area as the Browns get a win over the Washington football team in week number 3. Washington now are 1-2 on the season. As I mentioned, the Browns 2-1. Washington took a 7-0 lead after the first inning. However, the Browns poured it on in the second quarter. Sorry, I know I said inning. I meant quarter. 17 straight points by the Browns unanswered in the second quarter. They took a 17-7 lead going into the half. However, Washington start the third quarter very strong, scoring 13 unanswered points in that third quarter, taking the lead back. However, Baker Mayfield found his connections. 17 points again for the Browns unanswered this time in the fourth quarter, and it leads them to a convincing 14-point margin of victory. A 34-20 victory for Cleveland over Washington. Dwayne Haskins had some horrible turnovers to end that game for Washington. However, Cleveland sports fans, it's all okay because the Browns have a 2-1 record now. If we look at the overall standings for the Cleveland Browns, they are still third in the AFC North Division. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0 in their first 3 games. They've won all 3, 2-0 at Heinz Field, 1-0 on the road. Browns come in at third in the AFC North. The Ravens with a 2-1 record at a 2/3 winning percentage at .667. The Ravens are 1-1 at home, 1-0 on the road so far. Browns first 2 games at First Energy Stadium, 2 wins for them. The Browns will be on the road, where they've only had one game so far on the road. That was in Baltimore opening week. Let's just forget about that game. However, they're on the road again this upcoming Sunday for a matchup with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys come into this game at 1-2, having lost against MVP caliber man for the Seahawks, Russell Wilson. He was fantastic in Seattle's win against the Dallas Cowboys. However, Dak Prescott with 3 touchdowns in that game, threw for 3 touchdowns in that game for Dallas. It's not the offense which is the question for Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. It's the defense. We'll see. Can Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns take advantage of the defense in Dallas? We'll see. It'll be a showdown in northern Texas this upcoming Sunday at 1 p.m. from Dallas. In that Washington win, Kevin Stefanski had a lot to talk about, especially the defensive options he has when it comes down to crunch time. Here's what Stefanski had to say after that win against Washington.
Yeah, it's important, Scott. This is a long season. It was great to see some guys that came back off of injury. Hopefully we'll get a few more here as we get going. But whether it's offense or defense, we want to use all of our players, especially the guys that provide versatility.
And the Browns, will, as I mentioned, will certainly need that versatility against Dallas this upcoming Sunday at 1 p.m. from northern Texas. The Browns, after that game in Dallas, will return home for a quick game against the Indianapolis Colts before heading back out on the road for 2 consecutive road games. First in Pittsburgh at the Ketchup Bottle at Heinz Field against the Steelers, and then coming back to Ohio for a matchup with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, a rematch, part 2 of the NFL Ohio rivalry. We'll have it all for you here on the Cleveland Sports Show. As the weeks go by, we'll have more updates on you for the Browns, as well as the NBA Finals and the Premier League. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. First and foremost, thank you very much for your time this week in listening to our 81st, yes, I believe it is, number 81, our 81st episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you all so much for your support and listening every week. Really, really appreciate it. If you haven't in a while been to NordoniaHills.News, well, you're missing out so much on the Cleveland Sports Show. We have past episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show, all the other 80 episodes on NordoniaHills.News, but you'll probably want to see the more recent ones. We have past episodes. I also have articles I've been writing that I wrote over the summer. Sports player biographies. I did some interviews over the summer as well. Make sure you check all of those out and read them. We've had a lot of people in the community look at them, so don't miss out on all that action. You can also access the Cleveland Sports Show on my Twitter page. At Nordonia Sports is my Twitter handle. Nordonia Sports. Or you can type in my name spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. The Cleveland Sports Show is also on Spotify, so wherever you are in the world and you need your Cleveland Sports Show satisfaction, you've got it on Spotify. Again, just type in my name. And you can go to YouTube. Just type in my name and the Cleveland Sports Show, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. And again, you will be able to listen to the Cleveland Sports Show to your heart's desires. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for all of your time this week. Go Browns. Unfortunate for the Indians. Better luck next year for them. Take care. Have a wonderful week. And thank you so much for your time.